Eliza Bennet had always believed that she was one of the lucky ones. 3 years into a seemingly perfect relationship with Ethan Carter, she had built a life that many of her friends envied. Ethan was the golden boy, handsome, wealthy, and well-respected. He took her to exclusive events, introduced her to his influential circle of friends, and always made sure to present her as the love of his life. But behind closed doors there were cracks in the foundation. Ethan had a habit, a strange one. Every night, without fail, he would silence his phone at exactly 9 p.m. It didn't matter if it was an emergency or if Eliza needed him, he wouldn't respond. She had learned not to question it. When she first brought it up early in their relationship, Ethan had smiled and said, "It's just how I grew up. My parents always made me go to bed early. It's a habit now." Eliza had accepted it. After all, everyone had quirks, right? But it became harder to ignore when it started to interfere with their relationship. One night, Eliza had been working late at the university's research lab when a searing pain shot through her abdomen. She had curled up on the floor, clutching her stomach, and dialed Ethan's number. It was 11 p.m. He didn't pick up. She called again. No answer. By the time she managed to call emergency services and get herself to the hospital, she had undergone an emergency appendectomy. Ethan didn't know until the next morning. His response: "I'm sorry, baby. My phone was on silent." Eliza had forgiven him. But that was the first crack in their relationship. 3 months later, she was sitting outside a classroom, waiting for Ethan to finish a study session with his friend Adam. Eliza had arrived early and decided to surprise him. But as she approached the door, she heard her name. "You've been broken up for 3 years and you still sleep on calls with Sophia?" Adam's voice was amused. Eliza froze at the name. Sophia. Ethan's childhood sweetheart. The girl who had left to study abroad 3 years ago. Ethan laughed. "I promised her. As long as I'm not married, I'll keep doing it." Adam hesitated. "But what about Eliza?" There was a pause. Then Ethan chuckled. "My schedule is regular." She believed it. "She's easy to deceive." Eliza's hand trembled against the doorframe. Easy to deceive. A wave of cold humiliation crashed over her. All those nights she had felt guilty for being annoyed at his schedule, all the times he had dismissed her feelings, all the moments she had defended him to her friends, it had all been a lie. The classroom fell silent. Eliza turned and walked away, feeling the sharp sting of betrayal burn through her chest. Her breath quickened as humiliation settled in. Her phone buzzed. It was her professor. "Professor West, have you reconsidered the overseas program? It's a career-changing opportunity." Eliza stared at the message for a long moment. An hour ago she would have said no. After all, Ethan had told her that doing a long-distance relationship wouldn't work. He needed her close. She had declined the offer out of love. Out of loyalty. But not anymore. Eliza's fingers hovered over the screen. Then with a single breath she typed, "Yes. I'm ready." Her hand was steady as she hit send. For the first time in months she felt clear-headed. Ethan could keep his childish promise to Sophia. But she wouldn't be a part of the deception anymore. Later that night Ethan called her. He sounded warm and affectionate. "Hey baby. How was your day?" Eliza smiled coldly. "Fine. I miss you," he said softly. Eliza's smile widened. "Do you?" Ethan's voice sharpened. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Eliza said. "I just realized how easy it is to deceive me." There was a long silence. Then Ethan chuckled nervously. "Eliza." "I'm tired," she cut him off. "Good night, Ethan." Eliza ended the call, silencing her phone. And for the first time she felt free. "Better," Eliza said softly. "Much better." She heard James's smile in his voice. "Good." 2 days later, Eliza saw Ethan and Sophia talking near the campus courtyard. Sophia's hand was on Ethan's arm. They were smiling. Ethan caught Eliza's eye. His smile faded. Eliza smiled back. She turned and walked away without looking back. Eliza stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the crisp collar of her white button-up shirt. Her reflection stared back at her, calm, composed, and controlled. The subtle flush of color in her cheeks wasn't from excitement or nervousness, but from the quiet strength that had settled beneath her skin. It had been 2 weeks since she told Ethan she was leaving for the overseas program. He had called her 3 times since then, but each time she ignored him. He sent long messages about working things out, and how he couldn't bear to lose her, but none of it moved her anymore. She had given Ethan 3 years of her life. 3 years of unwavering trust, blind faith, and quiet sacrifice, only to discover that he had been emotionally connected to someone else the whole time. That type of betrayal was not something that could be fixed with pretty words and hollow promises. Now Eliza was reclaiming herself. She picked up her bag and walked out of the dormitory. James was waiting for her at the library steps, his tall frame relaxed as he leaned against one of the columns. He pushed himself upright when he saw her, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You're early," he said. Eliza shrugged. "Couldn't sleep." James's gaze softened. "Thinking about Ethan?" Eliza smiled faintly. "No. Actually, for the first time I wasn't." James studied her face for a long moment before saying, "Good." They walked toward the library together side by side. James's arm brushed hers briefly and Eliza's heart skipped, just for a moment. "Hey," James said after a moment. "There's a student conference this weekend. Professor West suggested you join the panel." "Really?" Eliza's brow lifted. "What for?" "You've got the highest performance in the business strategy program. And you're about to represent the school internationally," James said. His eyes glinted with quiet admiration. "I think they want to show you off." Eliza smiled. "Well, if that's the case, you'll do it." "I'll think about it," Eliza teased. James chuckled. "Of course you will." They reached the library doors, but James stopped suddenly. His hand lightly brushed her wrist. "Eliza." She turned toward him. "Are you sure you're okay?" His dark eyes searched hers, soft and serious. Eliza hesitated. "Yeah. I'm okay." James's gaze didn't shift. "If you ever need to talk." "I know," Eliza interrupted gently. "And thank you." James smiled faintly. "Anytime." That afternoon, Eliza stayed behind in the library after James left. She was reviewing her research notes when a familiar voice cut through the quiet. "Eliza." Her head snapped up. Ethan stood in the doorway of the library. He looked good, effortlessly composed in his dark blazer and jeans, his blonde hair styled perfectly. But Eliza couldn't help noticing that there were faint shadows under his eyes. Her heart didn't jump at the sight of him. That was new. Ethan walked toward her, sliding into the seat across from her table. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Eliza closed her notebook. "We've already talked." "No, we haven't." Ethan's voice sharpened. "You're leaving the country, Eliza. That's not something you can just walk away from without a conversation." Eliza leaned back in her chair. "What is there to say?" Ethan's gaze darkened. "Eliza, come on." She raised an eyebrow. "Come on what?" "I made a mistake," Ethan said. His voice lowered. "I shouldn't have kept my promise to Sophia. I realize that now." Eliza's mouth twisted into a bitter smile. "You realize that now?" Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "I love you." Eliza's chest tightened. 3 months ago those words would have undone her. But now they felt empty. "If you loved me," Eliza said quietly, "you wouldn't have been sleeping on calls with her every night." Ethan's expression hardened. "It's not the same thing. I never cheated on you. Emotionally you did." Eliza's gaze sharpened. "You lied to me. You made me feel like I was unreasonable for questioning you. And the whole time you were giving her a part of you that I never got." Ethan's jaw tensed. "How am I supposed to believe you loved me?" Eliza said, her voice steady, "when you never gave me all of you?" Ethan's gaze flicked toward the window. "It wasn't like that." "Yes, it was." Eliza's voice sharpened. Ethan's mouth curled bitterly. "What do you want me to say, Eliza? That I'm sorry? That I'll stop talking to Sophia?" "No," Eliza said coldly. "Because you won't." Ethan's eyes flashed. "I would." "No, you wouldn't." Ethan's mouth opened, but Eliza stood, cutting him off. "We're done, Ethan." Ethan's eyes widened. "Eliza." "I mean it." Her gaze hardened. "This, whatever it is between us, it's over." Ethan's face twisted. "You're really throwing this away?" "I'm not the one who threw it away." Eliza's voice was cold. "You did that when you made me feel like I was second place to her." Ethan's jaw tightened. Eliza. Goodbye, Ethan. Eliza walked away without looking back. That evening, Eliza was walking across campus when she saw Ethan and Sophia standing together near the courtyard fountain. Sophia's hand was on Ethan's chest, her body angled toward his. She was smiling up at him, her eyes glinting with mischief. Eliza's steps slowed. Ethan's gaze slid toward her. Sophia leaned closer to Ethan, brushing her fingers along his jaw. Eliza's stomach twisted. And then Ethan smiled. He didn't push Sophia away. He didn't even look uncomfortable. Eliza's heart hardened. Sophia glanced at Eliza and smirked. She knew exactly what she was doing. Eliza turned and walked away. That weekend, Eliza attended the student conference. James sat beside her on the panel, his dark eyes focused as he listened to her speak. Afterward, as they were walking out of the hall, James said quietly, "You were incredible." Eliza smiled faintly. "Thanks." James hesitated. "You okay?" Eliza hesitated. "I saw Ethan and Sophia today." James's jaw tightened. "Did he?" "No." Eliza shook her head. "But I think I needed to see it." James's brow furrowed. "I needed to see how easy it was for him to move on." Eliza's gaze darkened. "It made things easier for me." James's gaze softened. "I'm glad." Eliza hesitated. "James." "Yeah. Would you?" He swallowed. "Would you grab dinner with me sometime?" James's gaze sharpened. Eliza's heart raced. "Just as friends," she added quickly. James's mouth quirked. "Sure. Just as friends." Eliza smiled. "Good." 2 days later, Eliza left the library late after working on her presentation. As she walked across campus, her phone buzzed. It was from Sophia. Eliza's lips curled. She opened the message. "Sophia, poor Eliza. Thought you were the special one? Think again." Attached to the message was a picture. Ethan and Sophia were at a bar. Sophia was sitting in Ethan's lap, her arm wrapped around his neck. He was smiling into her hair. Eliza's hand tightened around her phone. Her stomach turned, not with sadness but with fury. Sophia's next message came through. "Sophia, and by the way, he never stopped loving me. You were just convenient." Eliza's hand trembled. Her breath sharpened. Her chest tightened. And then, she smiled. Eliza deleted the message, blocked Sophia's number and slipped her phone back into her pocket. Sophia thought she had won. But the game had only just begun. Eliza sat by the large glass window of the university cafe, her eyes skimming over the city skyline beyond the glass. The warm aroma of coffee drifted through the air, but Eliza wasn't paying attention to it. Sophia's message was still fresh in her mind. "And by the way, he never stopped loving me. You were just convenient." Eliza's jaw tightened. The words had cut deeper than she cared to admit. But it wasn't the fact that Ethan had chosen Sophia that hurt the most. It was the humiliating realization that she had been nothing more than a placeholder. A safe, convenient fallback while he emotionally stayed tied to Sophia. Eliza had once thought that love was about trust, about giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Now she knew better. Trust was a fragile thing, and once broken it could never truly be restored. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was James. "James, dinner tonight?" Eliza smiled faintly. "Eliza, sure." James had been the only constant in the chaos of the past few weeks. He never pushed, never judged, and never offered empty comfort. He had simply been there, steady, supportive, and quietly protective. Another message popped up. "Then, can we talk? Please." Eliza's smile vanished. She picked up her phone and deleted the message without replying. No more second chances. That evening, James picked her up from the campus gate. He was dressed casually in a dark blue sweater and jeans, his dark hair slightly tousled. "You look good," Eliza said as she slid into the passenger seat of his car. James shot her a sidelong glance, his mouth curving. "So do you." They drove toward the city in comfortable silence, the tension of the last few weeks slipping away. James took them to a quiet rooftop restaurant overlooking the water. Warm lights reflected off the dark surface, creating a soft, golden glow. They ordered drinks and James leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. "So," he said. "How are you?" Eliza hesitated. "Better." James's gaze sharpened. "But..." Eliza sighed. Sophia sent me a message. James's expression darkened. What did she say? Eliza's lips curled faintly. That Ethan never stopped loving her. That I was just convenient. James's jaw tightened. And you believe that? I don't know, Eliza said quietly. Maybe. James leaned forward, his gaze intense. She's trying to get under your skin. Maybe, Eliza repeated. James's eyes narrowed. Eliza, if Ethan really loved her, why would he have spent 3 years with you? Because I was easy. Eliza's voice was cold. I didn't question him. I didn't push him. He knew I wouldn't leave him no matter what he did. James's gaze darkened. And now? Eliza smiled faintly. How he's learning. James's mouth curved. Good. They sat in silence for a moment before James said, You're leaving soon. Eliza's heart tightened. Yeah. James hesitated. Do you want to leave? Eliza stared at the water, the reflection of the city lights flickering in the distance. I think I need to, she said softly. James studied her face. Will you come back? Eliza smiled faintly. Why? Will you miss me? James's gaze sharpened. Maybe. Eliza's heart skipped. But before she could reply, her phone buzzed again. Ethan, I'm outside your dorm. Please, Eliza. I just want to talk. Eliza's smile vanished. James's eyes narrowed. Is that him? Yeah. James's gaze sharpened. Do you want me to handle it? Eliza hesitated, then shook her head. No. I'll handle it. James's gaze lingered on her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. When Eliza returned to campus, Ethan was standing by the dormitory gate, his hands shoved into his coat pockets. He looked disheveled. His hair was slightly messy and his eyes were shadowed. Ethan. Eliza's voice was sharp. He turned, his face softening when he saw her. Eliza. Eliza crossed her arms. Why are you here? Ethan's mouth tightened. I needed to see you. Eliza's expression remained cold. About what? I made a mistake. Ethan took a step toward her. Sophia, she's nothing compared to you. I was stupid. I thought I owed her something because of the past, but... Eliza's eyes narrowed. But what? Ethan hesitated. But you're the one I love. Eliza let out a soft, bitter laugh. Do you think that's enough? Ethan's jaw tightened. Eliza. You emotionally cheated on me for 3 years, Eliza said coldly. You lied to me. You treated me like I was second place. And you think just saying you love me is enough. Ethan's eyes darkened. I was confused. No, Eliza interrupted. You were selfish. Ethan's face twisted. Eliza. You let her take up space in our relationship while making me feel like I was overreacting. You made me feel small. And you knew exactly what you were doing. Ethan's breathing sharpened. I didn't mean to hurt you. Eliza smiled faintly. You just didn't care enough not to. Ethan's face paled. Eliza took a step forward, her gaze sharp. You say you love me? Yes. Ethan's eyes flashed with desperation. Prove it, Eliza said. Walk away. Ethan's mouth opened but no words came out. If you love me, Eliza said, her voice soft, you'll let me go. Ethan's breathing quickened. Eliza. Walk. Away. Ethan's chest rose and fell. His hands clenched at his sides. Finally his face twisted. You're really ending this? He asked hoarsely. Eliza smiled faintly. You ended it a long time ago. Ethan's face darkened. Eliza. Goodbye, Ethan. Eliza turned and walked away. 3 days later, Eliza was in the library when Sophia approached her. Sophia was wearing a fitted black dress and heels, her hair styled in loose waves. She slid into the seat across from Eliza with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Eliza, Sophia purred. Eliza raised an eyebrow. What do you want? I just came to see how you were doing. Sophia's smile sharpened. I heard you and Ethan broke up. Eliza's lips curled. You heard. Well, he told me, Sophia said, her voice sweet and venomous. After all, we've been reconnecting. Eliza's gaze darkened. Congratulations. Sophia's smile sharpened. You're not upset? Eliza's mouth quirked. Why would I be upset about leftovers? Sophia's eyes flashed with irritation. Careful, Eliza. You're sounding bitter. Eliza's gaze sharpened. No, Sophia. Bitter would mean I care. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Ethan was never really yours. Eliza smiled faintly. Keep him then. Sophia's mouth opened, but Eliza stood and leaned down slightly. But if you think you've won. Eliza's voice dropped. Then you really don't understand the game. Sophia's expression twisted. Eliza smiled sweetly. Enjoy him while you can. I hear he's not good at keeping promises. Sophia's mouth tightened. Eliza turned and walked away. Later that evening, James sat next to Eliza in the library, their arms barely brushing. You okay? James asked. Eliza smiled faintly. Yeah. James studied her. What happened with Sophia? Eliza's smile sharpened. Let's just say, she's not going to enjoy this as much as she thinks. James's gaze darkened. And Ethan? Eliza's smile faded. He's not my problem anymore. James's gaze softened. Good. Eliza's eyes lifted to his. James. Yeah. Thanks for being here. James's mouth curved. Always. Eliza's heart steadied. And for the first time in months she felt truly free. Eliza sat by the window of the airport lounge, the soft hum of conversation blending with the distant sound of planes taking off. Her boarding pass sat neatly on the table in front of her, but her mind was somewhere else. Sharper, colder, focused. Sophia thought she had won. Ethan thought he could walk back into Eliza's life like nothing had happened. But they were both about to learn a very painful lesson. You ready? Eliza glanced up to see James sliding into the seat across from her. He set down 2 coffee cups and pushed one toward her. She smiled faintly. Yeah. James studied her carefully. You sure? Eliza took a slow sip of her coffee, the heat burning against her tongue. More than sure. James's eyes darkened with quiet understanding. Good. 3 days earlier, Eliza had stood at the entrance of a private club downtown, a place where the city's elite gathered behind closed doors. Her sleek black dress clung to her figure, her makeup sharp and flawless. Sophia and Ethan were inside. James had found out about the event through a contact in his investment firm. It was a high-stakes networking event, the kind of place where deals were made and alliances were formed. Ethan's father had been planning to introduce Ethan to several major players in the business world. It was supposed to be Ethan's big debut. Eliza smiled coldly as she stepped inside. The doorman nodded as he let her through. Soft jazz music floated through the air. Crystal chandeliers reflected across dark mahogany walls. Servers in tailored suits moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. It was the kind of place where people like Ethan and Sophia thrived. Eliza spotted them near the bar almost immediately. Sophia was dressed in a crimson dress, her dark hair swept over one shoulder. She was laughing as she leaned into Ethan, her hand resting possessively on his chest. Ethan looked calm and controlled, but his gaze sharpened when he spotted Eliza across the room. Sophia noticed his shift in focus and followed his gaze. Her smile vanished when she saw Eliza. Eliza's heels clicked against the marble floor as she crossed the room toward them. Ethan, Eliza said smoothly, her voice calm and pleasant. Sophia's smile sharpened. Eliza. Ethan's mouth pressed into a thin line. What are you doing here? Eliza smiled faintly. Networking. Sophia's eyes flashed. Funny. I didn't think you were invited. Eliza's gaze sharpened. I wasn't. But James pulled some strings. Sophia's smile faded. James. Yes. Eliza's eyes gleamed coldly. Turns out people in the financial sector actually like me. Sophia's mouth curled in distaste. Why are you really here, Eliza? Eliza leaned forward slightly. Just to watch. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Watch what? Eliza smiled. Your downfall. Sophia's mouth opened, but before she could respond, an older man approached the group. Ethan. The man's voice was sharp with authority. I'd like you to meet Richard Malone. He's been looking forward to discussing the new merger with you. Ethan's gaze flicked between the man and Eliza. Of course, he said smoothly. Just give me a minute. Eliza smiled. Oh, don't mind me. This sounds important. Ethan's gaze hardened. Eliza. It's fine, Eliza said calmly. This is your world, isn't it? Sophia's hand slid up Ethan's arm. Don't keep him waiting, Ethan. Ethan hesitated. His gaze sharpened. Eliza. Eliza smiled coldly. Good luck, Ethan. Sophia's eyes glinted as Ethan walked toward the older man. You're wasting your time, Eliza, Sophia said smoothly. Eliza's gaze sharpened. Am I? Sophia's smile widened. He'll always choose me. Eliza's lips curled. We'll see. 2 days later, Eliza's plan began unfolding. She had done her research, quietly and methodically. Sophia had been siphoning money from Ethan's father's business for months under the guise of business expenses. But in reality, the money had been going toward her own private investments, a shady tech startup with barely any infrastructure. Eliza knew exactly where to leak the information. By the next morning, the financial sector was buzzing with whispers of internal fraud. Ethan's father was furious. Ethan himself was dragged into a board meeting, forced to answer questions about how he could have allowed it to happen. By the afternoon, Sophia's name was everywhere. Articles on social media. Whispers in the business community. People who had once fawned over her were now backing away, treating her like a disease. Eliza sat back and smiled. That evening, Ethan showed up at her apartment. Eliza opened the door slowly, her expression calm. Ethan. Ethan's eyes were wild with desperation. Did you have something to do with this? Eliza smiled faintly. With what? Sophia. Ethan's voice sharpened. You ruined her. Eliza's gaze darkened. Did I? Ethan's hands curled into fists. My father's furious. He's threatening to cut me off. People are calling me a joke. That's unfortunate, Eliza said. Ethan's eyes flashed with anger. Did you know about this? Eliza's smile widened. I knew a lot of things, Ethan. Ethan's breathing sharpened. You did this. Eliza stepped toward him. What's wrong, Ethan? Upset because the girl you chose over me turned out to be a liability? Ethan's face twisted. You're not like this. Eliza's smile sharpened. No. I guess you didn't know me as well as you thought. Ethan's jaw tightened. You could have told me. You didn't deserve to know, Eliza said coldly. Ethan's mouth opened, but Eliza leaned in closer. You betrayed me, Ethan, she whispered. And now you know how it feels. Ethan's breathing quickened. Eliza. Get out. Ethan's eyes flashed with desperation. Eliza. I said get out. Ethan hesitated, then turned and walked out the door. Eliza stood there for a long moment, her heart pounding. Then her phone buzzed. James, dinner tomorrow? Eliza smiled. Eliza, yes. The next day, Eliza walked into the university business department, dressed in a fitted black dress and heels. Heads turned as she walked through the hallway. Sophia was standing near the elevator, her face pale and drawn. Eliza slowed as she approached her. Eliza, Sophia's voice was sharp. You set me up. Eliza's mouth curled into a smile. Did I? Sophia's eyes darkened. You ruined me. Eliza leaned in slightly. No, Sophia. You ruined yourself. Sophia's jaw tightened. Ethan will never forgive you for this. Eliza's smile sharpened. He already has. Sophia's mouth twisted. What makes you think he'll ever want you back after this? Eliza laughed softly. Who said I want him back? Sophia's eyes narrowed. You think you've won? Eliza's smile widened. Oh honey. I don't play to win. I play to destroy. Sophia's face paled. Eliza stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut between them. That evening, Eliza met James at the library. He slid into the seat next to her, his dark eyes glinting. So, he said, did you get what you wanted? Eliza smiled faintly. Almost. James's gaze sharpened. What's left? Eliza's smile widened. Just making sure they remember. James's mouth curved. Cold. Eliza's eyes glinted. You haven't seen Cold yet. James chuckled. I like this version of you. Eliza smiled. So do I. Eliza stood by the edge of the pier, the cool evening breeze brushing through her hair. The city lights reflected on the dark water below, shimmering like broken stars. Somewhere behind her, James stood quietly, his steady presence grounding her. It had been 3 weeks since Sophia's downfall and Ethan's humiliation. The business world was still buzzing with the aftermath. Ethan's father had stripped him of all responsibilities in the family company, placing his younger brother in charge. Sophia had disappeared from the social scene entirely, her reputation tainted beyond repair. And Eliza? Eliza was thriving. Her flight overseas was in 2 days. The arrangements had been finalized, her paperwork approved. Professor West had even secured her a private meeting with the head of the international program, a rare privilege that almost guaranteed her future success. But despite it all, Eliza felt unsettled. James stepped up beside her, his dark eyes glinting under the moonlight. Thinking about him? Eliza's lips twisted. No. James's brow lifted. Liar. Eliza sighed. I'm thinking about what comes next. James's gaze softened. You'll be fine. Eliza smiled faintly. Will I? James's hand brushed against hers, his fingers warm against her skin. Yes. Eliza turned toward him, her heart tightening at the steady confidence in his gaze. James had been there through all of it. The unraveling of her relationship with Ethan, the fallout with Sophia, and the quiet chaos that followed. He had stood beside her without judgment, without pressure. Just there. And now she was leaving. James's hand curled more firmly around hers. Come on, he said. Let's get out of here. They walked toward the parking lot, the quiet hum of the city buzzing in the background. James's black car was parked beneath the streetlight, the cool glow of the lamp illuminating his sharp profile. Want to grab something to eat? James asked, his mouth curving faintly. Eliza's phone buzzed before she could answer. She sighed when she saw the name on the screen. Ethan. James's gaze darkened. Seriously? Eliza muted the call. He's persistent. James's expression sharpened. Want me to handle it? Eliza smiled faintly. No. I can handle him. James's mouth curved. I don't doubt that. Eliza slipped into the passenger seat. James slid in beside her, the soft scent of his cologne wrapping around her as the engine started. They drove toward the city, the silence between them comfortable. Eliza's gaze drifted toward the window, watching the lights blur into soft streaks of color. Her phone buzzed again. James's jaw tightened. Want me to toss it out the window? Eliza smiled. Tempting. She picked up the call. Ethan. Eliza. Ethan's voice was sharp and urgent. We need to talk. No, we don't. You can't leave like this. Eliza's smile sharpened. Oh, I think I can. Eliza, listen. Ethan's breathing quickened. I made a mistake. You've said that before, Eliza said calmly. I didn't know how much you meant to me until I lost you. Eliza's gaze darkened. You didn't lose me, Ethan. You gave me away. Ethan's voice sharpened. Eliza, please. Goodbye, Ethan. She ended the call and tossed the phone into her bag. James's eyes slid toward her. You okay? Better than okay. James smiled faintly. Good. The next morning, Eliza stood in front of her apartment, a single suitcase at her side. The morning light streamed through the trees, casting soft golden patches on the pavement. A black car pulled up to the curb. James stepped out, his hands in his jacket pockets. His dark eyes swept over her thoughtfully. Ready? Eliza's lips curved. Yes. James lifted her suitcase into the trunk, then opened the passenger door for her. Eliza slid in, her heart steady. James climbed into the driver's seat. His hands gripped the steering wheel as he started the car. James. Eliza said quietly. Yeah. Are you going to miss me? James's smile was faint. Every day. Eliza's chest tightened. You don't have to say that. James's gaze sharpened. But it's true. Eliza hesitated. You could come with me. James's brows lifted. Tempting. Eliza smiled. Just tempting. James's hand brushed against hers. I've got a business to run here. Eliza's smile faded. Right. James's hand curled more firmly around hers. But I'll visit. You promise. James's dark gaze softened. I don't make promises I can't keep. Eliza's heart fluttered. James's thumb brushed against her knuckles. And Eliza? Yeah. You don't need Ethan. Eliza smiled faintly. I know. They reached the airport 15 minutes later. James pulled up to the curb and climbed out, taking her suitcase from the trunk. Eliza stood in front of the departure gate, her heart thudding softly against her chest. James stood close to her, his dark eyes steady. "I guess this is it," Eliza said softly. James's gaze sharpened. "It doesn't have to be." Eliza hesitated. "James." He smiled faintly. "Go. James. If you look back, I'm not going to be here anymore." Eliza's heart squeezed painfully. "Why are you saying that?" James's gaze softened. "Because you need to know you can do this without me." Eliza's eyes burned. James's hand brushed against her cheek. "Go." Eliza's heart twisted. She took a shaky breath and turned toward the gate. She didn't look back. The flight was long, but Eliza barely noticed. She spent most of it lost in thought, her mind replaying the last few months over and over. By the time she landed in London, it was early morning. The cool air greeted her as she stepped off the plane, her suitcase rolling behind her. She was alone now, and it felt good. Her phone buzzed. It was James. "James asterisk, you land okay?" Eliza smiled. "Eliza asterisk, yeah." James's reply came through almost immediately. "James asterisk asterisk, good. Have a great first day, Eliza. Asterisk." Eliza's smile widened. "Eliza asterisk, thanks." 3 weeks passed quickly. Eliza settled into her new apartment near the university campus. She quickly gained the respect of her professors and classmates, excelling in her coursework. James texted her often, short messages that made her smile. But he never called. One night, after finishing a particularly brutal research project, Eliza sat by her window overlooking the city lights. Her phone buzzed. It was a video call. James's name lit up the screen. Eliza's heart skipped. She swiped to answer. James's face appeared on the screen. Dark eyes, messy hair, soft smile. "Hey," he said. Eliza smiled. "Hey. How's it going?" "Tiring," Eliza admitted. "But good." James's smile widened. "Good." Eliza hesitated. "James." "Yeah. Do you miss me?" James's gaze sharpened. "Every day." Eliza's breath caught. James's mouth quirked. "Do you miss me?" "Every day." James's eyes softened. "Come back soon." Eliza smiled. "I think I will." James's gaze darkened. "Eliza." "Yeah. James hesitated. "Never mind." Eliza's heart raced. "James." James's gaze sharpened. "I love you." Eliza's breath hitched. James's gaze didn't waver. "I've loved you for a long time." Eliza's heart thudded painfully. "James." "And I'm willing to wait," James said softly. "For as long as it takes." Eliza's eyes burned. "You don't have to wait." James's gaze sharpened. "No." Eliza smiled. "I'm coming back sooner than you think." James's mouth curved. "Good." Eliza's heart steadied. James smiled. And for the first time in a long time, Eliza felt like she had won. End of story.